I'm Phil Auerswald. I'm an associate professor at the School of Public Policy at George Mason University. I'm also very pleased to be a senior fellow here this year at the Kauffman Foundation, and I'm an advisor to the Clinton Global Initiative. There's really one driver of the coming prosperity, and that's the productive power of people. People as consumers is a story that we're familiar with. People as resource depleters, people as competitors for scarce resources. But the other side of that is the productive capabilities of people, what people bring with their imaginations and what we each contribute as parts of teams of different sorts solving problems everywhere that we live. Now, these two ways of thinking about human beings aren't actually in deep tension. We are in the world doing both all of the time. And so understanding the trend of history where people have simultaneously, yes, grown in population over the last 200 years in a dramatic fashion, now world over 7 billion people, and certainly resource pressures that are serious around the world and ways of dealing with those resource pressures that are also evolving. Simultaneous to all of that is what I see as really the core, the definitive, the determining trend of our historical time period, which is that at last, the majority of the world's population, most people alive in the world today, are connecting with 400 years of improvements in technology and institutions, 400 years of creation of opportunity that we in the rich six of the world have been taking for granted for a long time. But the rest of the world hasn't. And not only will this global majority be benefiting from this tremendous new era of inclusiveness and economic opportunity, we will benefit as well. And we will benefit in ways that we haven't really begun to imagine from this new world that I'm calling the coming prosperity. When we think about the role of entrepreneurs in creating the coming prosperity, entrepreneurs are working in an environment that has history, that has culture, that has institution, that has the overhang of the past, that has the momentum of technology, that has all of the physical realities of ecosystems and ecologies under strain, that has all of the accumulated behaviors of the planet. This is the world into which an entrepreneur steps. And yet, it's also possible to create entire new worlds and open up entire new pathways of possibilities that were unimagined before a single person had them in their mind. So, from my standpoint, that is the key underlying message of the book, that it's a false dichotomy to pit sort of the inevitability of history as sort of one historical narrative. That was the Marxist narrative. And the other, the heroism of the individual, which has tended to be the kind of caricature of the capitalist narrative. They're one story. This is not new. This was figured out in the 19th century by Tolstoy, who was trying to understand the movement of history in his work, and by Ortega y Gasset, and by many others. And that false dichotomy continues to pervade our discussions about the possibilities of the future, either marginalizing entrepreneurs or disregarding the way in which culture and the overhang of history determine the future. They both happen simultaneously. That's what history is about. If there's anything that I was trying to get at in the book at a more fundamental level, it's the universal, in all societies, need to balance order and adaptability in order to achieve progress. From my standpoint, that's why entrepreneurship is such a critical part of the story of progress in any society at any point in time, even though we may look at the activity differently than how we see entrepreneurship today. But the dimension of a society that allows for continued adaptability, not just on a behavioral level, but on an institutional or even cultural level. Societies need structure and expectations in order to function, but they also vitally need adaptability, creativity, innovation of the most profound variety. For many people, when they hear entrepreneur, and even more outside the United States than in the United States, it's a pocket filler. It's somebody who is out for their own interests, who is seeking to benefit at the expense of others. Now, obviously, we at the Kauffman Foundation don't look at entrepreneurship that way. But great entrepreneurs don't look at entrepreneurship that way. I was just had the chance to hear Richard Branson speak at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress that the Kauffman Foundation supported as part of Global Entrepreneurship Week in Liverpool just recently. And Branson is absolutely eloquent on this point. Entrepreneurship is about creating value. Anybody who undertakes an entrepreneurial venture with the objective of making money will fail. Entrepreneurship is not about making money. One of the ways in which entrepreneurs gauge their success is a financial return. But there are other ways. There's reputational returns. And there's a sense of an ethical return, a sense of what I did today made a difference. So one of the things I want to talk about in this book is not just challenging incumbent interests, but also challenging incumbent language, incumbent ways of describing our reality that are holding us back in our own minds. And if we can't progress in our own minds, we can't progress in a society. So absolutely, this chapter that's titled Left, Right, Forward, this book is about the forward piece. And we have to get past this language, this 20th century language that's saddled with the burdens of a past that is disappearing so rapidly before us that we don't even have time to adjust. And part of the adjustment is finding new language and new ways of describing our circumstances and the possibilities of the future. The first thing that governments can do is not get out of the way. So this is too often the line that one hears when you talk about building a culture of entrepreneurship. When government gets out of the way entirely, we lose a lot of the structure of the economy that allows it to function. This is, again, going back to the order and adaptability trade-off. We need adaptability. It doesn't mean that we don't need structure and order. We have to find the right balance. So it's not government get out of the way. It's favor incumbents less. The interests of incumbent power will be organized. Legislating away incumbent power is not going to happen. Incumbent power is always going to find a way to organize itself and to try to influence outcomes. What everybody who is not part of an incumbent interests, and we can talk about education, we can talk about healthcare, we can talk about energy, we can talk about finance. Think about each one of those industries and think about who's organized to keep things as they are and to prevent the creation of a space for the future. In every one of those instances in the United States, we know who the organizations are and we can find their offices. Okay? They're going to be there. They're not going to go away. Everybody else has got to also be attuned and to organize to try to encourage our elective officials to favor incumbents less. That's point number one. Point number two is real quick because it's very difficult, right? Quick because we're searching for the right way to do it. And that is find a way to actually support entrepreneurs. There are two ways of reading a very similar story. If the story is told as very smart people somewhere are doing things that will change your lives, what that says is stay out. Don't get involved. You probably don't have the abilities to participate. And we'll let you know when we next want to report back to you on the tremendous progress and advances we're making. That's one way of thinking about progress in human societies. I don't think that's the real story, and that's not the story I wanted to tell. The most interesting story from my standpoint, in terms of economics, is what we've been talking about. The role of entrepreneurs in disrupting existing modes of economic activity that then in turn creates political transformation that then creates the dynamic for a prospering society. What I think is the real pathway to the coming prosperity is not scale-up technologies, it's scale-out technologies. It's technologies that create opportunity, and what I wanted to focus on is what people do with that opportunity. And that really is the role of entrepreneurship.